Hey y'all, the Dread Duck here again, and you may have noticed I'm dressed even more strangely than usual. That's because today I'm going to be talking again about LARPing. This episode is going to be a follow-up to my series related to live-action role-playing, and in this episode, as I said before, we're going to be talking exclusively about Bicolline. So, what is Bicolline? First, Bicolline, or the Duché de Bicolline, is a place. It's an area. It's about 350 acres of gorgeous woodlands in northern Quebec, not far from the city of Shawinigan. When people refer to Bicolline, they're generally referring to the Grand Bataille, or big fight, big battle. That's the week-long event that occurs in August of every year, except 2020 because 2020. Anyway, but Bicolline actually has events, campaigns, and tavern nights throughout the year, except in the dead of winter when it's under about 8 feet of snow. So, for the purpose of our initial discussion, we're going to focus just on the Grand Bataille and talk about what a week-long event at Bicolline is like. So as I said before, Bicolline encompasses an area of around 350 acres. Within that are what amounts to several small medieval villages. There's Old Town, where the tall cross-beam medieval-style homes stand shoulder to shoulder and then loom over the streets with narrow alleyways between them. There's the New Town, which is, dominated by this large multi-story auberge or inn. That's the centerpiece, and then there's rows of shops and markets. And then there's smaller communities like Crooked Town, with its odd-angled buildings, the Dwarven Observatory and Windmill. There's the Elven Wood, where there's small homes hidden down amongst the dense forest that surrounds them. There's the Forêt d'Arduinos, which are cozy little round homes on stilts with high-peaked roofs that sit amongst the pines near Newtown. As you head towards Old Town, you'll pass by Traveler Camp with multiple colored Vardos parked in a circle. Hidden down in the woods, you'll find a circle of standing stones. And one of the great landmarks of Bicolline that, was the pirate ship, which set in a valley alongside the river that divides the town from the battlefields. Unfortunately, the pirate ship was decommissioned in 2019. As of now, as of me making this video, I don't know what the plans are to replace it, if there is one. So, speaking of battlefields, hundreds of acres of dense forest, a massive open battlefield that includes a palisade fortress, and a crisscross of roadways and paths. They're all separated from the town by this glacially fed river that bisects the property. There's one bridge that leads across the river, and that means that everyone who enters the battlefield has to do it through the same, narrow channel. And that way they can be checked to make sure that they've all been safety inspected before entering the field, because safety is a big deal. So I've mentioned the medieval village, battlefield, but what is Bicolline really? The Grand Bataille is hard to describe, honestly. When I tell people about it, I kind of tell them if you took a Renaissance fair, like a really big Renaissance fair, and a music festival, and Burning Man, and you just kind of mashed them all together with a bunch of combat in there, then you've got a start of what we're actually talking about. But that's just the starting point. Really, until you experience it, it's hard to understand it. And it can take years to really, I guess the word is grok, what it's all about. So the world of Bicolline is a fantasy world. There's elves, dwarves, fae, every other type of creature you can imagine. And because it's a fantasy world, you get this wonderful mix of cultures and periods all coming together in one time and space, right? So essentially, anything that wouldn't look out of place in Lord of the Rings, but go all the way up to the early age of gunpowder. So everything from the Dark Ages to the Renaissance, but fantasy. So I can't possibly talk about every aspect of the event in one episode, or honestly even in several. I'm just going to start, as you can tell by the way I'm dressed, talking about the combat system. First, it's important to understand that combat at Bicolline can be intensely physical. However, it's open to anyone ages 16 and up. And when I say "and up," I mean that my 72-year-old father-in-law took to the field last year and had an absolute blast out there. Now, to be clear, he didn't chase anyone down or charge into the thick of the fighting, but that's just the thing. You can do as much or as little as your level of physical fitness or your desire to exert yourself allows. You can basically fight as hard as you want or stand back and watch and enjoy the spectacle. The rules are very simple. The weapons that are used are constructed of foam latex. Although they can be homemade, they have to pass this rigorous inspection process to be allowed on the field. Every weapon taken onto the field has to go through this inspection process, regardless of whether it's a commercial product or something you made in your garage. A commercial product can and they do become damaged, and an exposed core in a sword or something, it has the potential to be dangerous. The process is called homologation, which is just a fancy way of saying standardization. So a little bit about those weapons. Commercial foam latex weapons, they vary wildly in terms of price and quality. I'm not going to go into that. This isn't going to be like a gear show, but fundamentally they're all kind of similar, right? They have a rigid but flexible core. It's usually made out of fiberglass or carbon fiber. They have a foam blade or striking surface around that core, and then they have this latex skin that makes them durable. So, for example, this sword here, you can see it's got quite a bit of flex to it, but the important part is that it's it's very soft and squishy. So getting hit by it is kind of like getting hit with a Nerf bat. So the price range on these things can run the gamut. It can be anything from $30 US to, it's kind of the low end, to pretty much whatever you're willing to pay for something, super elaborate, custom. It could get pretty out there, but it's up to you. There's a wide range. Of course, and it's not just swords, right? There's spears, there's axes, there's two-handed axes, there's maces, there's halberds, there's flails, there's bows, crossbows, ballista, catapults, cannons. I'm not going to get too down in the weeds on how all of that works, but I'm happy to answer questions regarding the rules, and I'm going to include links to the rules both in French and English down in the description. So the basic rules of combat are really simple. The body's divided into 6 zones. The head and neck is one zone, each arm, the torso, and leg. Each part has 1 point. So if a weapon strikes that body part is destroyed, injured, crippled, however you want to play it. The game is technically touch, which means the sword does not have to and shouldn't hit you hard enough to actually injure you. It just needs to just touch to count. The face, the eyes, nose, mouth, and the groin are no-go zones. Don't hit people there. And if you are hit there, technically it doesn't count. Sometimes it just happens by accident. It will happen. You will get hit in the face periodically. You will sometimes get hit in the groin. Sometimes you just take it because you just want to kind of walk off the field, make sure everything is still where it is supposed to be. Piercing and thrusting weapons cannot be targeted at the head. So like spears, arrows, and that's for safety. That's, see, taking an arrow between the eyes doesn't count, but it will get your attention in a hurry. Usually you'll spot the archer just long enough for them to apologize profusely for the poor shot before they scurry off to the safety of friendly lines. So, since the combat system is obviously pretty unforgiving, you can carry one indestructible shield. Indestructible just means that it can take any number of hits. It can get hit 1,000 times and it will never break. So you can always block with this. Obviously, you can block with you can use your weapon to parry blows. You can block with your sword. And you can wear armor. So, as you can see, I'm wearing armor. So the thing about armor is that armor must be real armor. So that means it must, if you're wearing leather armor, it must be thick, hardened leather. And thick, hardened leather counts as 1 point. If you're wearing chainmail, that counts as 1 point. If you're wearing solid steel, that counts as 2 points. So, for example, since I'm wearing chainmail and hardened leather on my arm, if I were hit in the arm, I'd lose 1 point. That's my armor. It's now gone, and it's not going to come back. So that right arm is unarmored for the remainder of the battle or until I die again. So, if I get hit again in that same arm, the arm's disabled. I can't use it. So, for example, if I was carrying a two-handed weapon, like a bow or a spear, and I lost my right arm, I can't use that weapon anymore. So I need to either go to a backup or go get the arm fixed or just die. If you get hit in a leg and you lose the leg, you then have to drop down to your knees and remain in place. You can't crawl around or move around anywhere. You can pivot in place and defend yourself. You're still alive. You just can't go anywhere. That's why a lot of the archers, they look for people with lightly armored legs, and they have this leg 'em and leave 'em strategy where you just leave somebody isolated out on the battlefield, and maybe they'll be there for a while, or maybe they'll eventually just decide to kill themselves. So this is kind of an important part of that. The vast majority of the battles at Bicolline are timed events. Battles can last up to 4 hours. So death isn't the end for you. Although there is this deep and complex magic system at Bicolline, there's no direct magic. So that you won't hear lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt. However, both divine and some arcane magics give certain individuals the power to heal the wounded or slain on the battlefield. A healer simply has to touch the individual and flip over this little hourglass that they carry. When the last grain of sand has passed through the hourglass, that individual is healed and they can rise up and continue to fight. In the event that there are no healers around you, or you died off alone, remember, die loudly. Once the flow of battle around you has passed, like the lines pass by you, you then can just get up and walk to a respawn point. Also, there may be times when the marshals you'll just have such a big mess of people that the marshals will say, dead, rise, and everybody respawn. And so the whole mass of people will get up and walk back to their respective respawn points. And once you've respawned, you can run back into the battle, die tired. There are some other little nuances. Monsters, for example, if a monster strikes any part of you or your equipment, including your shield or your weapon, you're dead. Dead. That's it. You're dead. So don't get hit by monsters, period. Trust me, you'll know a monster when you encounter one. If it's an 8-foot-tall wolf carrying this massive two-handed sword, you're not going to be going, I wonder if that's a monster. At this point, you're probably either thinking, wow, that's a lot of gibberish, or wow, where do I sign up, or why am I watching this video at 3 a.m.? But there's just so much more. Keep in mind that Bicolline is an entity, as a thing. It's been running as a continuous game for 25 years as of 2020, the year that wasn't. So there's this cultural depth to it that we've only sort of begun to dip our little toesies into. Which, by the way, is why I generally tell first-timers to not make any decisions, really, going into it, what you want to do in the grand scheme of things. Don't write this really deep character backstory until you've gotten there and seen what's available, because you may find something more wonderful and things may develop. I really like the idea of everybody starts as generic peasant hero and gets a chance to develop as they attend. Which is exactly what we're going to end this episode on, because next part we're going to talk about the world, and we're going to introduce some of the regions and some of the guilds, and I hope to have some of the guild leaders on to talk about what it is they do, what their particular culture is like, and then we'll start to delve. So be sure to subscribe, like, share, hit me with those comments and questions. There's bound to be questions, and I'll see you guys next time.